Welcome to another episode of Women in Family Business. We are WIFB, the global initiative for women to share their stories and expertise on matters related to the family enterprise. What do a corporate career, working in a family business, and founding a startup have in common? Surprisingly, more than you might think. Nadine Karadag's journey is a fascinating blend of these diverse environments. And in this episode, she reflects on how her approach to leadership and innovation has varied in each setting. She tells us about the lessons from each phase of her career and how they shaped her trajectory, the challenges and rewards of founding a tech firm today, and the importance of fostering a culture of innovation for business survival. Enjoy this episode with Nadine. I think today what we'd love to dive into with you is like you actually describing to us sort of like your experience in these different stages of your career. Like you've literally gone from and are still involved, like, from being in the family business, which I know you're still supporting very actively, towards like being in a totally corporate setting in finance, then to today's role that you have, which is so exciting, co-founder of Valeo Wellness tech startup. And we're just really interested, I think, all of us to understand, first of all, how did that career progression occur? What made you decide to switch and change at different moments? And then we'd love to explore a little bit more about sort of the lessons you drew from each one of those stages of your career.
So, when someone writes their CV and, they go to a job interview and they make it sound like I have planned all this process and this is my career growth. We all know that we never write our CV beforehand. It's what life brings to us. So I do think every one person of us lives through that experience, but I would say just trust it because most of the time it's what we should be going through. So to take you through my trajectory, when I first graduated in finance, I joined the stock market. So I was working in NASDAQ, Dubai, DFM. So it was a very government, corporate. It was my first job. And honestly, your first job, I was a bit of a geek. The geek in me just was soaking all the information. I think you have two verticals of learnings. One vertical is more the skills. So I was learning really what does an IPO mean? How does a company go to an IPO? And the other one is I was just learning what are the dynamics of a company. You're the most junior there, so nobody really cares about you, but you can see everything. So I had different type of managers, each one's leadership style. I learned from each one. So I did that. Then went to do my MBA in INSEAD. Then moved to the family business. So the family business was a corporate setting. I was young, I would say, I was in my 23, 24. And the family business is, I always say it's a different animal. It's a different standard of working. It's a different dynamic, especially if you are from the family. Because you're not only dealing with the dynamic of a just normal work structure, we're also dealing with the dynamic of family dynamics. If I was working directly with my dad, and I was working with employees he's worked with for many years, and it was a new industry. And I'm very grateful for that experience because it has helped me so much in my startup experience.
You eventually left the family business then to pursue again a more corporate avenue in finance before you started Valeo. Tell us about, I guess, that sort of transition then again, because then you'd spend time in the family business for a long time. You got used to working with your dad. You got used to working with all sort of as I guess also future owner perspective, etc. So it's a very different mindset, right? Like to go to work, being part of the owning family, being part of that kind of thing. And then you went back into the corporate setting. So what was the biggest shock to your system when you went back in there? And what were the things that you missed and didn't miss, I guess, in relation to the family business as well?
So I then joined the Growth Gate, a private equity company that raised around $200 million. Very grateful for that experience too. The reason I left is I didn't want to run the day-to-day business of a construction company, and I thought I was not the right person to run. I think what's very important in family business is that the family needs to protect the business. So I knew, and my dad eventually also understood that I am not the right person to run the day-to-day. So what we did, I worked 2 years with a GM who was still our GM, Mr. Sarkan, who I also respect very much, and worked together for him to, slowly take care of the day-to-day. And I took more of a board structure, board position. In the private equity, I would say I love finance. That's been my dream. Since university, I wanted to join a private equity firm. So I would say it was like a dream for me. I love companies. I love analyzing them. I love balance sheet, income statements. I love strategies. So for me, it was like a dream come true. Like, I loved it. We had, 8 different portfolio companies. Each company had a different strategy. So this is the skills vertical, what I learned. I learned deal structuring. I mean, Karim or Randa or Haitham, the ways they structure deals in terms of either buying or selling companies. I've never seen that before. So learning that as a skill was amazing. And then from a like soft skill leadership. In finance, it's a much more different leadership because the teams are much smaller. You're not, running a construction company with 5,000 people. You're running like you're 10 people in the team, but everyone highly educated, highly disciplined. So it's a different type of leadership. So it was much more, I would say, content oriented. So we would read the FT all the time. We would debate the economy. We would talk about different companies, about strategies, about macro strategies of different industries. Like it was very, very interesting. But the way you lead that is much more like hands off, I would say. And it was more of a just 10 people working well together and managing from a board level company. So it's you don't get your hands dirty. I do think that there's so much value in what private equity firms do and how they look at companies, but it's not operational.
And so, what made you take that plunge at a moment where you could have been very comfortable just moving along in this space and becoming very senior in the private equity space and gaining influence there? So, what made you, I guess, like leave that comfort and sort of like go for the very uncertain environments of a startup
Yeah.
company?
So I think definitely when you have a father who's a founder, you have a bit of a bug in your blood. So I really did want to get my hands dirty, and value is something very personal to me, is a problem I want to solve in this world that is related to health. For personal reasons, health has always been, hospitals, clinics have always been part of my life. And it's always, my question was that why is it hard? It's already hard when you're dealing with a health issue, but then you have to deal with long waiting lines, booking a doctor, getting the documentation, finding the right doctor, going, back and forth to hospitals, clinics for blood tests, for example. It was something that I truly, truly thought needs fixing. And I think COVID was a wake up call. A human being by themselves, have a wake up call when they have a health scare. And I think COVID was like a health scare, global level. So I knew the opportunity was there if this is what I want to do. In the same time, I was, Sundeep, I met him during my NCAD years. He was a good friend. And we were just, talking of the idea, why don't we launch something together? So we would have breakfast Thursday, 8 a.m. I think for a couple of months we had it. And we would just talk about ideas. It was more on a friendship basis to meet, but then we would talk about ideas. And he got COVID. He got COVID really bad. He was in the ICU. So I introduced him to my well-being coach, Jamie Richards, who really helped him recover. And Jamie helped me a lot in my health to recover. So we decided to, launch Valeo and co-founded it, Sandeep and I, and also Jamie is one of the founding teams.
When you started out, though, like when you then really took that plunge and said, like, okay, I'm really going to do this, it would be really interesting to understand, Nadine, like, what are the main things that I guess, like, you learned about yourself in the first couple of years of Valeo, like, where you were like either surprised positively by your own skill sets and what everything that you've learned so far, how it helped you, but also like, where did you hit your limits in the first instance that you maybe didn't expect to?
When you're in a roller coaster of a startup, you don't really have time to reflect. And now we're 2 years and a half down the line. And I think maybe the last 3 months, I felt like a bit more comfortable to be able to reflect. And I am honestly very proud of what the team has built, and it's a teamwork. And you forget that like all this hard work that you, your team, and your co-founder are putting are creating something because you're living it day by day. Then you wake up one day, you're like, oh my, yeah, we've actually built something. It is actually helping people. We are actually making people feel better. So it's been a humbling experience.
How do you think today, when it comes to your team and when it comes to your stakeholders, like, into what kind of a leader do you feel like you're evolving? Are you someone who is explicit about like what you care about as a leader, or have you taken on some of your father's indirect, like, methods as well, where you feel like, I'm doing it more by placing people into situations, or like I'm doing it more by creating opportunities, or I'm doing it more by leading by example, for instance? I'd love to know more about what you've taken on in terms of a style, I guess, today.
I think you always have to lead by example, always. This is a clear thing in everything. Being a startup founder has been very humbling. I mean, the amount of favors you need to ask, it's been very difficult personally for me skill wise, because, and this is the first time I actually say it, because it was my first tech company. So if you look at each career growth I did, the industry even changes. Not only my role changes, but the industry changes. So it was my first healthcare. It was my first tech. It was the first time I was a founder. You really need a team that understands that, like, I'm not going to give them like a straight trajectory. I'm going to tell them this is the goal, but how we're going to get there, we're going to find it out together. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that we debate and negotiate a lot with the team. There's no one way of doing something. And I mean, I think two other things that I appreciate a lot is in startups is you have clear goals, clear KPIs, clear outcomes, because you don't have time to waste. Not even a day you can't waste. And every 3 months you have a different company. You really have a different company every 3 months. So you need to be evolving all the time, changing your goals, evolving, learning, changing your goals, evolving, learning. And, it's very humbling. I really, again, say it's a very humbling experience. And one thing that I've learned from Sandeep, my co founder, is this mindset of like, fail fast and move on. Like, in corporate, you analyze a lot, you strategize, you ask so many opinions, and then you agree on something, and then you do it. No, in startup, like, you need a strong heart. And Sandeep taught me that, like, stop thinking, do it. It doesn't work, we move on. Like, you will never know until you execute it. And for me, I come from my leadership structure that I understood is I like to know things. I like to see everything before going into something. In startup, you might enter things that are, that you have no idea if, like, when you're walking, you're going to step and the floor is there or not. But you need to trust it. And then you say, if I'm going to fall, it's fine. I'll just fall and then get up.
I just love to understand, like, sort of like what you've taken from each one of those experiences, and how you today enable innovation in your company, like in your team, or if it's something that you very much hold at sort of like founder level, and sort of like it's you and Sandeep deciding, like, what's new, etc., and like how you look at it today.
What is beautiful about startup, and I think each corporate needs to have it in their blood, is every day is a problem solving day. I mean, with us, with Valeo, we were bringing a new concept, number one. So we weren't, it wasn't like a concept that was in the region. So I've always told the team that we're not reinventing the wheel. We are inventing the first thing. So it's okay to fail, but it's not okay not to come up with ideas and try. So every day we're problem solving. Every day we're finding solutions. Every day is an innovation, from my picker and packer to our CTO. Every day. Every problem can be solved. And the first way to solve it is tech. I have a lot of respect for tech now that I've been in it for 3 years. Because the first way they want to solve something is through tech, and it's always innovative. There's nothing not solvable. There's nothing that you can't improve. Every person needs to come up every day with new ideas.
Do you think about the future of your career? Is there an intentional goal that you're pursuing, or is it much more about survival of the fittest in the moment at this stage when you're still at that startup stage?
I think, Sandeep and I started Valeo based on a true purpose, actual personal purpose of solving, making health convenient. So right now, I can only see all the problems we still need to solve and build. I don't know. Right now, I'm very much in the present moment. in the present moment in terms of, what are the problems we need to solve today? What's our vision for the future? How can we grow? What do we need to build? Who do I need to become? And because, like I said, every 3 months it's a different company. Every 3 months you need a different leader. Who do I need to become? What's the leader that Valeo needs today? How can I become that? Am I that? So I have a business coach. I think this is one of the best things I did. And she helped me a lot in terms of like setting some foundations, because you have to evolve as a leader at all times. But right now I'm only living in the moment.